All right, Celtics beat fans, we are back. The NBA is back. The Celtics are back. It's good news, right? It's nice to have sports back, but actually games that matter. And first and foremost, here's something that matters more than anything else, especially in Orlando, in that Orlando bubble. With these games being played, all those teams down there, not a single positive test for the coronavirus. Everything is negative. Everybody is testing negative. Nothing doing. Despite even the snitch line, there are no problems inside that bubble since everyone got in there, which is great news. But focusing in on the court, that is what we're here to do. Brian Robb, Boston Sports Journal, Evan Valenti, producer, as well as sometimes host of this program. Welcome in, boys. How are you?
Good to be here. Good to be with you guys. Excited that we already got a week of hoops under the books, and I expect that snitch line will get busy once the playoffs roll around at them. It's just you don't want to waste that on seeding games.
Yeah, I saw Giannis, Kawhi, Paul George, LeBron, AD. They were all hanging out together. They were all out at Magic City getting wings with Lou Williams.
I am petrified, B-Rob, of what recruiting stories 5 years from now go back to the time in the bubble. Like how, I think we've talked about this on past shows too, but you always hear about it now. You think back to like LeBron and Wade and Bosh, those guys teaming up in Miami, and it went back to the Olympics, and Carmelo was in the mix. What recruitment stories down the line are going to revert back to, well, when we were in the bubble, I'll stay in at the, whatever hotel, these three teams were together going out to eat with blah, blah, blah. It's a mess.
It's going to be, there's 10 writers, 10 reporters in there right now. That's 10 books right there. Everyone's going to have a book with their stories from behind the scenes.
And you've had to write from afar. Here's the question, though. Would you rather be in the bubble, or do you like it this way?
I mean, you'd always rather be in the arena, to be able to interact, because you're going to get different reactions from the players when you're asking a question right next to them as opposed to on a Zoom press conference. With that said, being in a bubble for 3 months without seeing family and stuff, that is not ideal either. Which is what NBA reporters are having to do down there. Kudos to them that they're able to make that sacrifice. But there's certainly pluses and minuses with the virtual nature of it. But all things being equal, I'd want to be in there and just to get not only interact with the players, but even being in the arena too, to hear the trash talking when you're that close to the court with no crowd there. I think that would give you just some added perspective to everything.
Well, joke's on all those reporters anyway, just waiting for the inevitable. The Celtics just put up 149 points against the Brooklyn Nets. I know they're undermanned, but clearly we're just biding our time now for the next championship parade in Boston.
Yeah, a G League parade maybe because that was pretty much the Long Island Nets or whatever their G League team is named. But no, 149 points is 149 points. I think it was the most since 1992 in any game for the Celtics. So, and it wasn't in the fact that it was, I think, 7 guys in double figures. Those, that was probably one of the best bench games of the year, period, for that team. And that's a very encouraging thing to see if you're Brad Stevens heading into the postseason starting in a couple weeks.
What's the most encouraging thing, though, through 4 games? Because we're halfway through this regular season reset, of course, 8 games, then the 16-game tournament. Jason Tatum could not have possibly been worse in game 1, but he has been very good since. Jaylen Brown, consistent throughout. We've seen some of these bench guys, Romeo Langford, Robb Williams most recently. You guys both know how I feel about Robb Williams. I absolutely adore the man. These guys have been, solid off the bench of late, of course, getting more run in a game like the one against the Nets, because you're not going to play your starters all that long when you're blowing another team off the face of the earth. Kemba Walker, the minutes are gradually going up. He didn't play in the latest one because of the knee, and just trying to make sure that the ramp up has him as healthy as he can be when the playoffs do roll around. Through 4 games, what's the big takeaway?
I think you have to start with Kemba, because that is kind of how this season goes for the Celtics right now. If you're talking about a deep run in the Eastern Conference, and he, the team's play has been up and down, and the defense has been a question mark, and there's plenty of big questions about the team. But if you're talking encouraging, Kemba is not only playing up to his minutes limits, but physically he looks good, and he's actually, the shots are going in. Like, it'd be one thing if he's moving around well, but the shot is rusty or he's not consistent there. But I think he's shooting, close to like 55% from 3 so far over these first 3 games. And if you go back to when the season ended, Adam, and when, before the hiatus, I think he hadn't shot over 50% in a game twice in a row since like mid-January. And that kind of just tells you just how, much that knee was bothering him and just impacting his play, even when he was trying to play through it. But now they're clearly babying him. The plan seems to be working. Long way to go there, but the results are there early for him, and that's huge for this team in terms of what their ceiling could be.
The one thing with Kemba, though, the one thing that I'm waiting for, and I agree with the fact that I think you can go like 1A, 1B, Kemba's health and how he's looked, 1A, and then like Jalen being just incredible and hasn't missed a beat. Actually looks even better than he was before we started the shutdown here. But the one thing with Kemba, yeah, I know it is. And I can't, like, the guy, I don't know what he did during the break, but he looks tremendous. The one thing with Kemba that I'm a little concerned about, and my concerns are sort of getting alleviated the more the Celtics play, is Kemba picking his spots to really take over the game, because you can see spots throughout, the Portland game, obviously, Milwaukee, obviously, and of course, the Nets game he didn't play, unfortunately, but I didn't really need him in that one anyway. But the game against Miami, where you could see the Celtics kind of struggle a little bit, especially the Miami game. They were having some tough times getting their half-court stuff. And Kemba, at one point, would take the reins a little bit, but in my opinion, because of the development of Jason Tatum and how he's been the past couple of days or past couple of months, he's been, the Celtics' best player and arguably one of the best players in the league. He's kind of taking the reins has been kind of the thing. Well, now Kemba's got to relearn to pick his spots a little bit better. And there were moments both in the Milwaukee game and in the game against Miami where I wanted him to take more assertion earlier instead of waiting, because when we get to the playoffs, you're not going to have the value of like waiting anymore. Like these games, it's playoffs. Like, not every game's going to be a game 7, but every game really, really matters. All right. So the only thing left for me with Kemba Walker, he looks great, looks explosive. That burst is still there. That speed is still there. He gets north and south like he used to, which is the big part of Kemba's game. His handle's always really crisp, but it's feeling out the flow of the game and figuring out when he needs to settle the troops, calm everybody down, and take control. That's the last step with me with Kemba Walker, B-Rob, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And that's where, again, 4 months off, everyone just kind of getting back together. And like you said, Kemba adapting to the new version of Tatum and still, realizing when it's his team. But I think the encouraging thing is, Brad Stevens is, I think, mixing and matching with his top 4, top 5 guys. And so there are going to be times in the game where Kemba is the featured option and Tatum's the featured option. But like you said, Kemba getting more aggressive there, especially versus certain opponents like Milwaukee, which really give up that, pull up 3 to him all day long. That's his bread and butter. The more he gets comfortable in those spots again, the better.
Celtics obviously be Rob 2-2 since this resumption at this point. The first game against the Bucks when there was so much rust, and again, Tatum was awful. That is absolutely a game that if Tatum is even mediocre, they probably win that one. They lose by 7. Portland eked that one out. Narrow loss to the Heat, and obviously blow the Nets out of the water. So these are 4 games that, at least the 3, if you include the ones they lost within that, all really close, all very winnable games. I don't know how much these players are focused in on seeding, how much they care, how much they're outlining future matchups. What I do think Brad Stevens is naturally paying a lot of attention to is, okay, what are things going to look like by the time this comes to an end, August 13th, a few days from now, really, and I got to hone in on a playoff rotation. Even Romeo Langford, we alluded to him before, could be part of this rotation just because of what he does defensively. Do you feel like you're getting little hints, little clues into what the playoff rotation is going to look like through 4 games?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we kind of saw that what Brad Stevens thought was going to be out of the gate in these games. The fact that, Langford and Rob Williams, those guys weren't playing at all or were playing very minimally, but then the results weren't there and the defense wasn't there. So that, I think, led him to go search a little bit down the bench a little more to see what these younger guys could give him. And the Romeo Langford thing, to me, that'd be a guy, if I'm Brad Stevens, I just want to throw his feet into the fire the next 4 seeding games. You're not going to play him 30 minutes or anything like that, but have him be a consistent part of the rotation, because you're not sure what that ceiling is yet. You know what Semi Ojeleye is. You know what Brad Wanamaker is. Langford has improved over the course of the year, and his defense, I'd say behind Smart off the bench, is better than anyone on the perimeter there. And that's what you're going to need in the playoffs. So the offensive for him is a question mark, obviously. His jump shot's a question mark, but he seems to have a really good feel for a rookie. And, a couple of months down the road, Gordon Hayward's going to disappear for probably a couple games for the birth of his son. And those minutes are going to have to go somewhere, whether that's going to be, if the Celtics are lucky enough to still be playing at that point, it'll be good to know what you have in Langford in that spot instead of trying to, throw rookies out there and not sure what you're going to get.
To that end, is Robert Williams going to get a look over a guy like Enes Kanter? I mean, obviously, over the course of the regular season, the original regular season pre-pandemic, that wasn't the case for a couple of reasons. One, I think Kanter entrusted within a certain role, despite the fact that he is kind of a defensive sieve, not through lack of effort, just lack of ability. He'll give you more offensively more often than not, but Robert Williams, with the injury, he wasn't out there. Now, all of a sudden, you see him first opportunity in that game against the Nets after playing something like 20 seconds or whatever it was total in Orlando prior. The guy comes in and there's the Pete Campbell Mad Men, not great Bob. Well, great Bob. Great Bob. Perfect. 7 for 7, 18 points. He's out there mashing guys. He's rebounding. He's blocking shots. This is a guy that I want to see out there on the regular.
Yeah, I mean, that was the best game of his career by far against Brooklyn on Wednesday night. And it was a slow start for him in that game, too. He had a couple slip-ups on both ends of the floor early, but, with a big lead, gives the ability to play through those mistakes, and then he got it going. But there are Kanter, I thought, has played well in Orlando. Tice is Tice, and the defense kind of comes and goes a little bit there, but he gives you the versatility that Kanter and Rob Williams can't. But there's no question in certain matchups, like the Celtics would love for Rob Williams to come and kind of win that job and show in the minutes that, hey, I can be the rim protector on the defensive end of the floor and also be the rim runner and, pull guys in from the gravity perspective, whether it's the lobs or just simply in the pick and roll, because you have to account for that, and that opens up shooters in other parts of the floor. I think Langford is going to ultimately make the bigger impact than Rob Williams. I think Rob Williams is just not there as well as he needs to be for a big man on the defensive end yet to kind of like from a communication standpoint, from a trust standpoint of Brad Stevens. But to your point, Adam, like, why not? I think he's, with that performance, he should earn time in all the rest of these seeding games. See what he can do, see if he can sustain some momentum. And then, in the right matchup in the postseason and against the right team where, Kanter's getting cut up defensively and Tice is in foul trouble, then Williams might be an appealing option there.
These guys have to be really benefited by this whole experience, right? Like, I get there's nothing good about a pandemic. There's nothing good about what's going on in sports right now, although we can save this for a little bit later. What Adam Silver in the NBA, like this, I mean, unbelievable. The competition, the way it looks, the way it sounds, the way it feels, the return of the NBA has just been incredible. Far better than baseball. It's better than hockey for different reasons. Just the way, maybe it's the nature of the sport, the way they can kind of trap the court and obviously the virtual fans and block off the other seats so you can't even see them. It's like they're playing inside a box. It looks incredible. But just to key in on my point, especially for a guy like Langford, who's a rookie and dealt with injuries early in the year as well, is he really benefited just by the fact that there is no home court advantage? There are no fans. There's nothing other than himself to psych himself out in this situation. The moment is only as big as these young guys across the board, whatever team they're on, allow it to get for themselves within their own heads, if you know what I mean. Like, we talk about the importance going into this situation for all these guys of will to win, of psychological ability and really grasping at the moment versus what it is in a typical year. And it seems like Langford especially is a guy who could benefit being in Orlando versus, I think, if life were normal, he probably doesn't play in the playoffs at all.
Yeah, it certainly levels the playing field for those guys, and especially, any young role guy, when you go on the road in the playoffs, if you look at the splits for those players, like, it's like the shooting plummets, and you get lost, you get intimidated by the crowd, like you said. And even on top of that, just the unique situation of having 4 months to kind of break down where your game's at and to see what went right, what went wrong, get the feedback. Actually, you're obviously limited in terms of how much these guys could work on their game individually, but it does provide just like fresh legs heading into the postseason instead of an 82 game grinder, which is, more than twice of what these guys went through in college. So I'll be curious to see not just how guys like Langford and other younger players respond to that, but just team wide. We've seen you guys touched a little bit. I haven't touched a little bit on Jalen earlier and how good he's looked, but a lot of these guys have come back, trained well. This is a team that's shown good discipline, I think, during quarantine. They weren't huffing and puffing in these games up and down the floor. They're ready to go, and they've clearly worked on their game, and we're going to see in a couple weeks how much it pays off.
Yeah, I've enjoyed the Romeo Langford experience only because, a lot of people early on, you look at Langford, his inability to get on the floor, and then when he got on the floor, like his shot's a little, not falling as much. He's still learning his ways a little bit. But the one thing that I think Brad and Danny have focused on, and this is really highlights Romeo, but also highlights Jason Tatum and also highlights Jaylen Brown and a lot of their strategy. A lot of these one and done guys, they don't put all their eggs into the basket of one season, right? Romeo had played through a torn ligament in his thumb on his shooting hand. Obviously, he wasn't as good as he could be. Jaylen Brown had a mess of spacing when he was playing with Cal. It was a disaster. He shot like 20% from three-point range. It wasn't as good as he could be. Jason Tatum played hurt through that year. But again, back with Chaminade, he was unbelievable back in St. Louis. So what Boston has done is said, hey, like these guys that we've picked, whether it's Romeo, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, are all high pedigree guys who maybe had a rough year, 1 year in their collegiate location. But if you go back to their high school career and look at all the tape and all the film and all the sessions we've had with them, their high school tape is really impressive. And with Langford, and this has been my argument since they drafted him. They drafted him because he was going to be a top 5 pick if he didn't have to go to Indiana. All right. He was Mr. Basketball in Indiana. He had all these accolades, had a rough year because he played through an injury. And then, you look at him now here in August, and his instincts on the floor show immediately. Again, that shot is still a work in progress, and Joe Mazzulla is doing a great job trying to work with him on that. But this just highlights the scouting department, Austin Ainge, Danny Ainge, Brad Stevens, and everybody else involved with that. They don't just look at 1 year and say, that's it. No, they go back as far back as they possibly can, and they trust their instincts. And Romeo, it might pay off huge because you look at a guy at 14 that should have gone top 5. That's going to be big going forward as they try and fill out the rest of this roster. You might have a guy in Romeo who can step in with that second unit and really provide some scoring further down the line. Getting him his feet wet right now in these scenarios in Orlando and in the playoffs is only going to help his development going forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And Ainge has a long history of doing this. You mentioned a few names. You go back to Avery Bradley, even finding plucking high schoolers like Al Jefferson, Kendrick Perkins way back. But yeah, he's been good at identifying good young talent that may have slipped through the cracks. And Langford is after what was not a nightmare start to the season, but missing summer league, being banged up, reworking the jump shot. He obviously couldn't work his way onto the floor in the first, 15, 20 games. But to me, the defense is there already, and that's usually the toughest thing for rookies to get on the floor. So plenty of time for the offense to come. And for now, they don't really need much offense from him. If he can play defense, he's going to play.
As we continue on here with Brian Robb, B-Rob, of course, people who are watching will understand this. Those who are listening will not. But I have to ask the question, why didn't you dress as nice as Evan?
I can't compete with that.
Sorry, guys.
Compete with Evan there,
man's in a full suit, looking suave.
Tux jacket.
I don't even have anything that good looking in my wardrobe, period. So I
just don't even own it.
Exactly.
I want to go toe-to-toe. I want to go toe-to-toe with Max one day. I want to just go shot for shot.
You need to have your suits made in Korea.
Yeah.
I've heard all the stories, man. He dresses immaculately, and whenever I see him, he's incredible. He's got it down, no question. I don't know whoever he uses. I know he does it once a year or whatever, but nice job.
I'm just sitting here in one of my homage.
It's a good shirt
NBA
though.
Jam Celtics. Yeah, Bird.
That's a great shirt.
And Mikhail, yeah, homage. Sponsor us, would you? The question though that I have for you, B-Rob, is through 4 games, what you've seen, obviously halfway through, 4 more to go. The report as well that Ben Simmons is out indefinitely for the Sixers, dealing with quite frankly, I mean, it's horrible. It could be a very serious injury long-term. You hope it's not, because he is an elite talent in the league. And also, you just never wish that upon players. You want to beat the best while they're at their best. I'm not so sure the Sixers, though, are going to be at their best when the playoffs roll around pretty soon here. And that very well could be a first-round matchup for the Celtics. So how does this impact things?
It's big. I mean, given how the Sixers, they clearly tried to rework their lineup for Orlando and put Ben Simmons at the 4 more, and now that plan kind of goes to shambles. And there really isn't much shot creation ability on that team outside of Simmons. And that's really worrisome for how bad their defense has looked. The Celtics have had their issues on defense in Orlando. Philly's looked even worse in that front. And so we'll see. My guess is they're going to try to put him on something. I bet you if it's Simmons will play, or at least give it a shot on playing in the playoffs, just based on what I've read about this injury. As long as it's not a more severe subluxation, like he should be able to give it a shot in a couple weeks potentially. But even then, like just jumping in straight to a playoff season for him at that point, that's not going to be easy, especially coming against the Celtics team. So I don't think the Celtics were going to jockey too much for positioning in terms of the 3-4 seed in order to avoid Philly and get the Pacers instead at this point. I still, if Simmons is playing, I'd still rather play the Pacers if I'm the Celtics, because I don't think Sabonis is coming back at all for them, and that is a huge game changer for them since their front line is so thin.
Look out for TJ Warren, though. TJ Warren's been unbelievable.
Yeah, 50
it is.
plus the other night.
Right? And so you do have to, they have been looking like one of the best teams in the bubble. I guess I trust that, you go to the postseason, the Celtics locking in a little bit more defensively. I don't think many teams in the bubble period outside of like maybe Toronto are locking in defensively at all right now. And who knows whether that's just slippage or effort, but it seems to be like a league-wide thing. I expect that to tighten up once the playoffs get going. But even still, like if TJ Warren and, Oladipo, who doesn't quite look like himself yet still, even after, having several months to rehab and get games in during this year after his bad knee injury, I'm still taking that. But yeah, if Simmons is out of the picture for Philly, you definitely, I don't care that Embiid's the best player in that series. No one else on that team really scares me too much. So I'd take them over what we're seeing from the Pacers right now.
Can you gauge your expectations for the Celtics right now through only 4 games and injuries and performances from other teams across the bubble, or is it all just so new and rusty and unfamiliar?
I will say it's probably still on par for what I think it's going to be, like a coin flip series against the Raptors in round 2. I still think that's what my expectation before the bubble started was for the Celtics, and nothing has changed to that point. If the Celtics came out last night and lost to that Nets team after getting not embarrassed but getting beat pretty well by Jimmy Butler Heatless team on Tuesday night, that would be like, okay, maybe they're really struggling to get things all together here on the defensive end of the floor. But it took care of business there. There's been enough flashes of promise early on both ends of the floor to see this is what turned this team into what looked like a 55-win team, for most of the year. And so Kemba looks good. Everyone else is healthy as of right now. So if they can maintain that heading into the postseason and actually have, I can't even remember the last time they entered a postseason healthy during the Brad Stevens era. But if they can get to that level and Smart doesn't suffer his inevitable next to last game injury, then I think they can go toe-to-toe with the Raptors. And, if you get there, then if you hit threes against the Bucks, then you have a chance. So nothing's changed in that front. To me, the only thing that would have brought them lowered expectations if Kemba did look like himself, and that hasn't been the case.
Well, B-Rob, I know you have got to run. We're going to keep yammering on here for a little bit, but we'll let you escape this show. But obviously, we appreciate you coming on and talking up all things bubble and the Celtics. Of course, you can always find B-Rob not only on Twitter, but Boston Sports Journal, 98.5 The Sports Hub as well. He can be heard, occasionally seen, depending on the program that you're tuning in for. So great to catch up, buddy, and we'll definitely have to do it again as the playoffs get moving.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, boys. And, look forward to catching up more down the road here.
Sounds good. Look forward to it. And of course, B-Rob hosts a show as part of the CLNS family as well. You can catch the Winning Plays podcast with Michael Pina, with Rich Levine. So we love having B-Rob on. But as Evan and I continue, just for a couple more minutes, let's, anything big that you're taking away from the stuff that B-Rob talked about, and any big disagreements that you have off of expectations for these final 4 games. And just to let the people know, if you don't have a schedule handy, as we talk again, it's August 6th, Thursday. Celtics will play, quote unquote, at Toronto in Orlando tomorrow night, and also have games Sunday against the Magic. Shouldn't be a problem. Grizzlies, who have just been, keeping a close eye on that pick, obviously, on Tuesday of next week. Then Thursday, it's the Wizards, who just don't belong there. And then right into the playoffs at that point.
I will back up B-Rob on the defense because Toronto looks unbelievable defensively. They were good defensively before the bubble happened and the shutdown happened. They were one of the best teams defensively in the league, and I think they look better than they did before we shut it down. I really do. They look, and maybe it's because everybody else looks terrible on defense, and Boston at times has locked it in, and at times it's looked really terrible. That Miami game, I wanted to throw my TV out the window. There was so many bad missed opportunities defensively that they just kept blowing. I'm not sure if that's just legs or just rhythm or what, but that Toronto team, and I think the one thing I learned is this Toronto. I thought Toronto was good. Don't get me wrong. It's just the system works, and Nick Nurse is a terrific coach, but they look like, in my opinion, and it's only 4 games in, so we still have a little ways to go. And with the Bucks, Giannis is the best player in every series. But I think Toronto has looked the best of any team in the Eastern Conference, and I don't even think it's relatively close. I think Kyle Lowry has been tremendous. OG Anunoby has stepped up for the last time we saw him, and he's had a pretty terrific year if you haven't been paying attention. Siakam's been great. Fred VanVleet is going to get a really nice contract when the season is done. They've been great, and they might not have the best player in every series, but they're going to have the best coach in every series. And that is a huge, huge, huge advantage for Toronto.
How much does that surprise you, though, without Kawhi Leonard?
I think it's probably one of the biggest surprises of the entire season that Toronto's been this good without arguably the best player in the NBA. And they've been able to figure out how to replicate not only his scoring, because his scoring obviously is a big part of what made them go last year, but his defensive prowess has shifted to some other guys, and the system just completely works. And whether they have this guy in or this guy in, this guy in, it all works. And it's all Nick Nurse. And I can't believe he didn't win Coach of the Year. I honestly cannot fathom. And I know, Billy Donovan had a great year. Budenholzer had a great year. None of those guys did the job that Nick Nurse did. And I think that Toronto, out of all the teams in the Eastern Conference, looks the sharpest. And if you're Milwaukee especially, avoid them until the last possible minute. They look tremendous. And if you're Boston, you can't overlook any opponent, right? You're going to have Philly maybe in round 1, maybe Indiana in round 1. And look, those 2 teams are banged up, and Boston should handle those teams. But that Toronto team's lurking, and that is a scary, scary team on both ends of the floor because of their head coach. And out of all the teams we've seen, they're the most impressive. Not even close.
What do you think through 4 with 4 to go? Perfect midpoint, obviously, not only for this show's return, but just for the Celtics return. We already outlined kind of the pros and cons, so I don't want to rehash things we've already talked about. But bigger picture, is there one overwhelming concern for you that's not the defense? I think for everybody, it's the defense. Beyond the defense, is there that one big concern?
We sort of mentioned it.
Conversely, if you'd prefer, the big thing that you feel great about. You can go on either side of the spectrum.
Well, there's 2 things, and they're kind of related. What happens to the Celtics when things go stagnant, I think, is a problem. Now, Hayward has, I think, been underratedly great this entire run. And I think, we've mentioned it maybe in passing, but I want to give him some serious props because he looks tremendous. But what this team –
probably the mustache.
It is definitely the mustache. I 100% agree with that. It's the power of the
that mustache.
No way. That's beautiful. He looks like – I made the joke the other day. He looks like a real-life Luigi. It's fantastic.
He really does.
He really does, especially when they're in green. It really throws me off. But offensively, this team sometimes, like Tatum had the rough night in Milwaukee, but he's been fantastic since. Jaylen Brown's been unbelievable, and Kemba in very limited minutes. I think the offensive flow problem they have will be alleviated with giving Kemba more minutes and Brad finding the best way to stagger the 4 guys. Because I talked about this on a different radio show that Boston has 4 guys that are going to score.
You do other radio shows?
Oh, I do. There's going to be. I know, you wouldn't know about that. You have 4 guys that are going to count for every night, probably somewhere between 80 and 90 points, right? Somewhere between there, between Hayward, Brown, Kemba, Tatum, somewhere between 80 and 90. Could be even more than that, depending the night. Maybe it's a good night. Maybe it's 100. Who knows? But you're going to have 4 guys who count for the majority of the offense. Brad Stevens has to find a way between Daniel Tice, Marcus Smart, and then any other combination of bench guys that he throws out there. They got to come up with a way to score 30 points, 30 points. Because if you score 90, 120, should win you most games. The defense has been great in the bubble, so I think $120 should probably get you wins on most nights. Finding the right combination of guys to get that is going to be huge. Now, Smart, pen of the night can be really hot or really cold. He's going to make winning plays either way. Tice, sets great screens, a great sealer, plays good defense, positionally, guards up and down, but not a guy who's going to score a whole lot. And then you have the mixed things off the bench between Brad Wanamaker and Romeo Langford, and whether it's Daniel Tice or Rob Williams, and then we'll see if Grant Williams goes into play. They got to find the right combination of guys to come up with 30 points a game between 6 guys, right? So, or let's call it, because it's going to be an 8-man rotation, 4 guys. So they got to find a way to score 30 points with 4 guys. Now, what is helpful with Boston is they have different guys to facilitate. They have a Kemba, they have a Hayward, they have a Smart. Those 3 do, and Tatum do primarily, the ball handling. Having those guys set up their teammates is going to be huge. And I think Smart has done a great job the first couple of games of dictating who gets the shot when. Like, okay, Tatum's hot, give him the ball. Tatum's cold, find somebody else, give him the ball. He does a great job. Like if Cantor's been doing great on the defensive boards, offensive boards. Next time down, get Cantor a touch early, see if he can go to work and see what he can do. Or, Jalen's hot. All right, give him the ball, clear out, everybody move out. So they got to find some things. I am encouraged by a lot of stuff, but the offensive lapses they have, which could be cured by playing Kemba Walker more, are concerning, especially against a team like Toronto, who you're going to have to go through to get to Milwaukee, who's another legendary defensive team and has length all over the floor. So, as you look at the bigger picture, the 2 teams Boston is going to have to beat to get to the NBA Finals. You can't have defensive or offensive lapses against those teams, because even if when you do, they can bury you on the other end. It's not going to be pretty.
I'll tell you, I totally agree with what you were saying, obviously, about Kemba Walker looking good and the limited amount that he has played. And right now we're between 18 and 25 minutes a game ballpark, basically, that he's played in these first 3. He has looked solid. He has looked locked in. He's shooting well. He's composed, even defensively. He's looking pretty good. He's assertive. The knee does not seem to be bothering him. That being said, it's just sort of like the antenna. My internal alarm goes off a little bit whenever I feel like, and maybe you disagree, I feel like Kendrick Perkins has gone out of his way to slight Kemba multiple times since the season restarted. Not saying, it's not an attack on Kemba so much as a skepticism that he's going to be there when the Celtics need him. Now, maybe it's just as a guy who's dealt with a lot of injuries in his career, calling out Kemba's injuries. I can't help but feel, knowing how closely connected he still is to that organization and to Danny Ainge and doing media with NBC and blah, 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 blah. I feel like he knows something that has not been revealed at this point, and I'm nervous about it.
I respect the opinion. I disagree, though. I don't think if something's wrong with Kemba's knee, I don't think anybody's saying anything. Not right now. I don't think they're going to say a word. I think they're just going to keep it. And the Celtics, there are other organizations out there where this would get out. But Boston does a good job of getting the information out that they want to have out there. I mean, the Markelle Fultz pick or the trade is the ultimate example of that, right? They wanted to make everybody believe they were taking Markelle Fultz for the entire time they were taking Jason Tatum. So they're really good. And it goes back to the point, although pour one out, like if Bull Pett says it, it's true. If he doesn't, then we don't know. Right. I understand where you're coming from, because again, he's won a ring with the Celtics. Obviously, he still has ties with the organization. But I don't think Danny Ainge or Austin Ainge or Brad Stevens or anybody's really telling Perk what's going on. I think it's Perk.
I don't think any of those three are, but I'm thinking lower level. Is there are people?
Is
there
anybody
that
left?
know-
Is it like Jeff Twist might be the only guy left? You know, like
There's
Eddie
some,
Lacerte's gone, Bidu's gone. I mean, who's left of that
There's-
crew in 08 that's still there?
Who's the equipment guy who's been there for like 30 years? JoJo.
Yeah, all right. Well, what is JoJo really? I don't know.
Look, I don't know. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. All I'm saying is, Perk, if you're listening, you're making me nervous.
He's making everybody. His takes have been unbelievable. I mean,
what did he say on TV
nervous.
the other day? And it was going around on Twitter like, well, in the Celtics, he was like, this is why I'm going with Toronto or I'm going with Milwaukee. And the Celtics don't have Kemba. Well, what do you mean the Celtics don't have? What happened? What happened to Kemba? What did we miss? What wasn't reported? What is this guy talking about?
I think it was a classic Perk mishap or something. I wouldn't put a lot of stock. Wouldn't put a lot of stock into Perkins on television. I love the guy. He's great. He's fantastic. He stirs the pot. He gets Twitter going. No question. But I love him to death because he was on the show in front of the program.
Hey, I'm pretty sure. I can't say this with certainty, but I'm pretty sure his media career started by doing this show. I think this was the first thing he did before he became the sensation that he is in the media world. Obviously, Perk was always Perk, but before Fox and ESPN and everything, he was on Celtics beat. Damn it!
It was a fun show to edit. Actually, that was a good time.
Yeah,
the classic. Cool. I wanted to call it. He kept saying something over and over and over again. He had a crutch, and I forget what it was. It was, but I wanted to call it that, like the name of the episode would be that. And the fact that I can't come up with it right now is completely ruining this take. And I apologize to anybody listening.
It's okay. People just need to go back and listen to the archives. Then
that's it. Yeah, go back and listen.
Go on to iTunes, search Celtics or Celtics Beat. It'll pop up.
Still there.
Look for the Kendrick Perkins show, which was at this point many months ago, and
about a year ago.
You'll find it. Yeah, probably.
It's about a year ago, like right now. Like, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It's probably about now. What are you nervous about?
Yeah.
You nervous about anything? When it comes to the season, are you just like, it's 4 games. It's the rust shows, but haven't played in 4 months. Obviously, the rust is going to show. Are you nervous about it? Because I am legitimately nervous about the lack of offense sometimes. And because it's only going to get harder when the playoffs start, defenses get better.
Yeah, see, I'm actually on it's the same take, but the opposite approach to it. I actually believe that the offense is going to be there, generally speaking, when they need it. I'm nervous about the defense showing up. And even though it is a Brad Stevens staple, even though they have the guys to do it, I am concerned about the defense making a key stop when it absolutely has to. And because, again, like that, people hear that statement, they think one play. No, I mean 1 quarter. Like, you might have to lock down for a quarter. You might have to lock down for a half. And we have seen no evidence from the Celtics of that so far in their return. Doesn't mean they won't get there. And it is a 4-game, very small sample size, but it is what it is. And, include scrimmage games as well. This is just the reality that it has been so far. I feel like there's so much talent there, both sides of the ball, but there's so much talent there that, like, Brown, Tatum, Kemba, even Smart, Hayward, obviously, random guy X, but like those ones in particular, I think the buckets are going to be there when they need them. A big key defensive stop against a guy that most people are not equipped to stop, the Giannis's of the world, the Embiids of the world. We know that they're thin at the big man position, unless a guy like Rob Williams all of a sudden, evolves to be a much bigger contributor on that side of the ball than people would have thought pre-Nets game, obviously. If that all happens, I will feel a little bit better. But in this moment, it's sort of the opposite end of your take, I guess.
Well, you look at that Blazers game, right, where Dame gets absolutely red hot. And do I love watching Dame get red hot, because he just starts pulling up from 38 feet, and it's just nothing you can do about it. But the one thing I will say is, I thought it took Brad a little too long to start trapping him as soon as he crossed half court. And not to plug somebody else's podcast, but Steve Kerr was on Simmons's pod and talked about how Dame, Trae Young, Steph Curry, all these long distance, Luka, these long distance shooters that have changed the geometry of the floor, that, you don't trap them, when they get to the 3-point line. No, you got to trap them as soon as they cross half court, get the ball out of their hands, get the ball moving somewhere else. And Brad did a good job eventually getting to that point, trapping him as soon as he crossed the half court line, getting the ball out of his hands, making CJ or Nurkic or Gary Trent Jr., who has not stopped shooting well this entire bubble run, getting the ball out of his hands and getting the ball to those guys and having those guys kill you. Because Dame, he's one of the few guys that once it gets hot, it's hard to take him out of his rhythm. Like a Harden, like a Steph, once he gets moving, it's hard. And now the one thing with Brad, I'm glad he did it, but you got to do that earlier when the games really count. Like you can't let Giannis get a full head of steam going to the basket over and over and over and over again. I know it's difficult. Trust me, he's 7 foot whatever and an alien. He's not really human. But they're going to face some guys coming up, like a Lowry eventually will get there. Embiid, if he's really feeling it, finding a way to get the ball out of his hands and moving it around, it's going to be really interesting. And I somewhat echo your concerns about the defense, but I go back to Brad Stevens is a defensive coach. They have the bodies on that side of the ball to really make things difficult between Brown, Tatum, Tice. I'll throw Romeo Langford in there just for, to throw him out there to shake the snow globe, as Brad always says. Smart, obviously. They have the horses to do that. I guess you and I are on opposite ends of the spectrum, but still have concerns about one very, very big thing. And it's just, 4 games to go. They haven't played in a long time. This all could be for naught. But if you don't see improvement quickly, the Celtics could look at a premature exit, and that's just going to be really disappointing.
But hey, full circle, what the hell are we worried about? They just put up 150 points.
Yeah, against the Poughkeepsie Nets. Not even Long Island.
We want to remind you,
Central New York.
This show is brought to you by betonline.ag. Go to betonline.ag for your exclusive sign-up bonus. We appreciate you being with us. Brian Robb, Boston Sports Journal, Sports Hub in Boston. And, of course, you can always hear him as part of the CLNS Media Network with the Winning Plays podcast as well. We'll plug other podcasts within the family. We're okay with that. None of those other shows. Ridiculous. Evan Valenti, thank you, sir. I am Adam Kaufman. Thanks for being with us. We will talk to you again in just a few days. Right back with you as these games continue. Celtics back at it tomorrow night inside the bubble. Gino, go on.